Let's convert some units. I think most of us know that 1 centimeter is equal to 10 millimeters. What I'd like you to think today is, when we think about centimeters, that's a bigger unit compared to millimeters. Millimeters are the tiny, tiny unit. When we're going from a big unit to a tiny, tiny unit, we have to have more of the tiny, tiny to make it the same amount. So when we go to a smaller unit, we have to multiply. Whereas when we go to a bigger unit, we need less to make it equivalent, so we divide. So the tip here is, look at the units. If you're going to a bigger unit, you have to divide because you need less. If you're going to a smaller unit, you have to multiply because you need more. So let's fill this in. If we're going from centimeters to meters, we're dividing by 100, and if we're going from meters to kilometers, again, we are dividing by 1,000. But if we're going from kilometers to meters, we're multiplying because we want more to make it equivalent. What about when we have units of area? For example, 1 centimeter squared is equal to how many millimeters squared? Well, 1 centimeter squared is the same as 1 centimeter times 1 centimeter. And we know what 1 centimeter is in millimeters, which is 10 millimeters. So these two are equivalent. And we know that 10 millimeters times 10 millimeters is going to give us 100 millimeters squared. So 1 centimeter squared is equal to 100 millimeters squared. Can we adjust our units pattern so that we can use it for areas? Yes, we can. So notice that before, when we went from centimeters to millimeters, we multiply by 10. But when we're doing centimeters squared to millimeters squared, instead of multiplying by 10, we can multiply by 10 squared. So when we deal with areas, we can just put in all these little 2's, and now we have the unit conversion for areas. And it works because we've just checked it. 1 centimeter squared is equal to 10 squared millimeters. So the little 2's. So there's two sets, lengths and areas, that we have to memorize. But in reality, we only have to memorize the lengths. For areas, we just put little 2's everywhere. And to memorize this one, there's a simple pattern. There's 10, 100, and 1,000. And remember, when we go from a big unit to a little unit, we have to multiply. But when we go from a little unit to a bigger unit, we have to divide. Another unit for area that we have to look at is hectares, and it's represented by HA. 1 hectare is 10,000 meters squared, or in other words, 100 meters times 100 meters. Whereas 1 kilometer squared is equal to 1,000 meters times 1,000 meters, we can use that to imagine what 1 hectare would look like. 1 hectare would be 100th of 1 kilometer squared. So we can write it down there and then add it to the list of things we have to memorize. Let's use this to answer some questions. Convert the following. First example, we have 25 millimeters squared. So millimeters squared is there, and we have to convert it to centimeters squared. So we have to divide by 100. So dividing by 100, we get 0.25 centimeters squared. Second example, we're going from meters squared this time, and we're going to millimeters squared. So we're going smaller unit, which means we have to multiply. And let's see what we're multiplying by. 100 squared means 4 zeros, and 10 squared means another 2 zeros, so altogether 6 zeros. So moving the decimal point 6 times, we get 70,000 millimeters squared. Last example, 35,000 meters squared is equal to how many hectares? Now we're not going to use the list at the top, we're going to use the list here because it has hectares. So we have to divide by 100 squared. 100 squared is how many zeros? 4. So dividing by 4, we move the decimal point 4 times, we get 3.5 hectares. That's it from me today. I'll see you in the next video.